What's up, people? You already know what's going on. Horns Down Podcast, Hall of Fame College Football Podcast, Sooners 360. You got me, Chris Mason, Jason Watkins. Obviously, we're here to talk about some news that's been going down. What's been going down lately in OU? Try to give you some tidbits, things that we've heard, things that we saw. But I think that we should definitely start with some of the new additions, some of the returns, all the rest of that stuff. But happy holidays, everybody. Hopefully everybody had a great New Year's, great Christmas, all the rest of this stuff. Hopefully you, as they say, filthy animals, did your thing out there on New Year's night. You know what I'm saying? I know Jason was probably out late on New Year's, but regardless, though, we got a lot of OU stuff to talk about. I want to say the additions from the portal, the two additions that we're definitely going to talk about for the second topic. But we'll start with, obviously, I think the biggest news today is the return of RMT, R. Mason Thomas, Robert Spears-Jennings, Kendall Dolby, guys like that. But we'll start with Kchris Mason. Kchris Mason, just what are your thoughts about some of the returners that are coming back next year?
Well, I can't go into great details on it, but let's just say that the amount of money OU defenders that OU retained were being offered in the event that they went into the portal would boggle the mind of our listeners. And I'm talking about numbers for OU backups. Talented young players being offered money that would sort of shock you. So I think one of the things we need to really kind of remember here is that our Mason Thomas in the portal market would be insane right now. That Robert Spears-Jennings, again, would be commanding high money. Dominic Williams, same thing. Obviously, Kendall Dolby's hurt, but I think getting him back, and now that he's got at least one additional year of eligibility, maybe two. So if his rehab's going a little slower, he doesn't have to panic, right? Because he's got some additional playing time with the whole JUCO announcement. But I think, Chris, overall, I think OU has probably the best or number two front four in the SEC next year, at least preseason. I think you've got two players who you could argue are legitimately first-team SEC contributors or nominees, and Jaden Jackson and R. Mason Thomas, based upon everybody who's returning and everybody who's leaving. So I think, from a perspective, OU has probably spent a lot of money, a lot of focus, and a lot of time behind the scenes that we haven't seen, making sure that they are offering these guys competitive deals that have kept those guys all out of the portal market. Now, has OU maybe overpaid in some instances? I think it's hard to know unless OU was legitimately in a battle with other schools to get them back out of the portal. And I think we would have seen, particularly R. Mason Thomas, Robert Spears-Jennings, and Dominic Williams. I think OU probably saved themselves money by presenting them with improved deals and stopping them from getting on the open market. This is a case where you see this in the NFL a lot, that they'll rip up contracts and renegotiate them to save money. This is what, I think we've all seen Nick Benito and Marvin Mims having, good years at the Broncos at the tail end, right? And those are two players. If I'm the Broncos GM, I'm tearing up their contracts, right? And stopping them from getting to free agency and giving them pay bumps and guaranteed money up front, which, you want to keep those guys as Broncos. And I think this is what having a pro-style front office is kind of what you've seen with OU's defense is the first example of a pro-style front office, right? Like, we don't want these guys even getting to the free agency market because we don't want to have to compete with all of the silly money that's out there. So we're going to pay good money and give our guys good offers to the point that they're not going to hit free agency. Let's just call it what it is. They're not going to hit free agency, right? We're going to renegotiate their offers, and we're going to give them good offers and keep them out of free agency, which is the way that the good, the best NFL front offices operate. Right? This is what they do. They identify their best young players, redo their contracts when they're starting to get good, and don't let them hit free agency. So I think that's what OU has done for their defense to make sure that they've maintained a defense that we all thought was really pretty good. Didn't have an offense that helped it at all or complemented it at all. And you've got a lot of guys coming back. And, I think obviously losing Stutz and Bowman's huge. But you think about the upside of the guys OU's retaining and the upside of the guys in the two deep. I think this is what we've seen a front. This is where we've seen this sort of NFL free agency model being applied by the nascent OU front office. It's not built yet, but that's kind of the model they're doing. Yep. And I like the free agent acquisitions. We can get to them later. Yep. We don't want to talk about them too much right now, but that's my opinion of what OU's done is they've identified their guys, re-signed them, and stopped them from leaving in free agency or having to pay more in free agency to keep them.
So I'll jump in here real quick, guys, wipe your feet. You know what I'm saying? Like on every channel, subscribe to every channel, do all those different things for us. Like I said, look, you got the Horns Down podcast, Sooners 360, and the Hall of Fame College Football podcast with Jason and the coach. Should definitely show us some love. Show Coach some love because I know he's on cloud 9 right now. But real quick before we let Jason go, I will say this right here. I almost forgot about Dominique Williams coming back, man. That's a big one right there. Simply because, and I'll say this and then I'll let Jason go. Year 2 is going to be better than year 1. Trace forward, people. Look at what G Baby has done. Year 1. Year 2 will be better than year 1. I think that you will see more production out of him. Still got to remember, this is a BV defense that is somewhat complicated. And even on that D line, the type of stuff that he likes to do all over. So that being said, Jason, what are your thoughts? We'll get to the acquisitions later, but what are your thoughts about all the kids that are returning to OU?
Well, I think we'd be remiss if we didn't thank Zach Alley for clearing out of the Switzer Center so that a linebacker would actually take a serious look at Oklahoma again. And I also want to thank Oklahoma State themselves for agreeing to stay behind in the Big 12 to be OU's minor league program. That being said, huge deal for RMT to be coming back. I think that's the other shoe that really needed to drop for everybody to remain, to keep them from jumping off the bridge, some of them, but I think that it's a huge deal. This is a guy that got 9 sacks in his first real time playing. He just really hadn't been able to stay healthy for the first couple of years that he was at OU. And so for him to kind of step up and really do his thing this year, and you got to figure that he's going to go in there and really make himself some money in the next part of his career in year 2. And, I think it's a huge deal. Obviously, as you said, to piggyback off of what you just said, Chris, Dominic Williams was big too, because you got to keep that depth. And I think that that's what we've done. On top of just the fact that you did re-sign RMT, you got to remember, you still have PJ Adebawe. You still have Nigel Smith that I don't think anybody's talking about enough. You still have Danny Okoye. There's a lot of guys in those rooms that, for all the trash that people have continued to kind of talk about, guys like Miguel Chavis, maybe we shouldn't do that anymore because this guy is delivering on players, cycle after cycle. And
so we'll get to that when we talk about the DN room because I want to focus on that. But I'll say this right here, and I don't want to get into an argument about it now. Save it for later. It's got to be early and often. It can't be in the last few minutes of the game. You know what I'm talking about. Everybody knows what I'm talking about. Can't have RMT getting 3 sacks at the last minute of the game. It's got to be early and often this year.
Well, to counter that just for a brief moment, OU playing with some leads would also help our pass rushers.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, RMT not, can't make an impact if teams are, he can't make an impact, rushing the passer if teams are up 3 touchdowns and are playing 8-minute offense on us.
We'll get to all of that. Point.
Yeah, I mean, in the end, really, you're gonna shut me down on even saying anything about it? Really, Chris? Killing me here, bro.
We'll get to that.
You just always in here taking up for Unc already.
This year.
In here taking up for Unc already. Y'all think RMT walked into the room like Jesus Shuttlesworth that game? He probably did. I probably would have. You know what I mean? I probably would have. No, overall, I think the RMT deal, it might be one of the biggest deals. And I think what Chris Mason was saying about the fact that you're seeing this turn into a real NFL-style front office setting. Last year they dropped the ball on the whole Caden Green deal, and you were starting to see some of these things kind of happening, and you knew it couldn't continue on, especially after you go 6-7 for a second time in 3 years. This is something that you can't afford to have this happen. And the one place we know that you're going to have to be really good, you expect this offense is going to have a rebound of some kind this year, but you couldn't afford to have a drop-off on the defensive side of the ball. In fact, they need to take a step forward this season, and I think that they're going to do that. Another year of work. I believe that PJ is on his way to becoming that guy. And the thing about it is you've seen in the past that some of the guys that early on they don't really get it, and then all of a sudden they do, and once the light turns on, they blow up. You think of Isaiah Simmons at Clemson. It took him until year 3 before he really started making a big impact for Venables and that staff there. So I think that they're gonna be huge. I think that they're still looking at corners and all that stuff. We'll let Mr. Mason talk about that for us. But I'm excited, man. I really am. And again, thanks to Okie Light for agreeing to be the minor league program for Oklahoma.
So I'll jump in here and just say this right here. I think that it starts in the trenches on both sides of the ball. Last year we were pretty damn good and stingy on the defensive side of the ball, the D line. We weren't so much on the offensive line. I think that this year, this is one of those years. I think your defense is going to be really good again. That back half still has probably some things that you would like them to improve as far as just not giving up as many big plays, kind of if we could reduce maybe the number of big plays that we gave up on some of those calls, maybe are we not as aggressive as we were or whatever the case may be. But you're thinking if you can add a corner or so, but like we said, we'll talk about that. But again, it's built in the trenches. And I think that you made a huge step by retaining Williams, RMT, and then obviously RSJ in the backfield, kind of be that captain, to be that leader back there to really get that DB room where it needs to be as far as just being an on the field leader. But retaining those guys, keeping those guys, and just adding to that's a huge win for OU all day long. I mean, all day long. Kendall Dobie coming back, and yes, the injury and everything and stuff. I would not expect to see him this spring, but you're hoping that at least by summer he'll be back. So, I mean, that kind of just makes you wonder, like, hey, I think that I believe that Kobe McKenzie with actual reps and getting 1 reps and being the one, I think he can be that guy that kind of fills that void. I think maybe we see a resurgence of Kanik. Maybe your linebacker room, I think is going to be pretty damn good. I still think it's going to be pretty good, but guys going to have to take this leap or whatnot. But now we could talk about the acquisitions that we made, 2 in particular. I know not everybody is happy about us turning into the Kennesaw State Sooners, right? But I think that you have to take it with a grain of salt, knowing that this Arbuckle offense is a very explosive offense, and anybody can have the hot hand that day. And I think some of these guys you want to got is just for reliability, but I think these guys are going to be useful. But defensive side of the ball, let's talk about the recent acquisitions, and we'll talk about linebacker first. I think that'll be the easiest. We'll explore the other with the DN room as a whole coming up soon. But Kendall Daniels should have had his ass here the whole time. Should have been here from the get-go, because I think that he would have excelled not only at the cheetah position, but I think he could have just whatever he would have been as far as, because I know. I believe that BV and all them saw him as a linebacker anyways, but I think it was more as far as this cheetah position. But for whatever reason, he for a long time with Texas A&M, committed there, ended up decommitting, went to OK State. I had some OK State people hit me up. They said, hey, the biggest question about this kid is effort, right? That's people that are really, really close to the program, that I consider close to the program. They talked about effort an awful lot. Some people say he takes bad angles, but when you look at the production, you look at the numbers, that's what you see, production. And in my opinion, my earnest opinion, and then I'll let Jason go, you take the kid from playing safety to playing linebacker. You add weight to him. He's playing a 3-3-5. 3-3-5 is different. This is not Iowa State, where they've had the kid in that system for 2 or 3 years. This is sprung up on him, right? But even with that, he still managed to put up production. But you had the kid playing safety, put up good numbers, came linebacker, put up decent numbers, right? Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, Kendall Daniels, I think a lot of people have always seen him as kind of that box safety type player, something sort of similar to what you were kind of seeing with Deshaun McCullough, right? OSU had the kid. I think they got a lot out of him. Effort is not something that I'm going to question about this kid coming here. And we'll talk about that same thing when we move to the DM room. But effort is not a thing simply because it's one thing to go to a place and, new scenery, new fit, new everything, and get to play your style. But it's another thing playing for coaches that you grow to actually like and that you actually are cool with, not only inside of the on the field, in the training rooms, in the meeting rooms, all the rest of that stuff, but somebody that genuinely like you're cool with outside of this. You get max effort from that. And that's one thing I'll compliment Chavis on. And that's one thing I'll compliment Brennan Hall, Valai, guys like that we've been told this, that, and more. But I think you're going to get that from Kendall Daniels. So, Jason, what are your thoughts about Kendall Daniels coming to OU?
Yeah, I think it's a lazy, whiny bitch commentary on the side of Oklahoma State fans to be saying the things that they're saying about him. You have a couple of plays that they keep running over and over again where he gave up a touchdown and stuff. But, I mean, what part of that football team didn't quit this year is what I want to know. Coaching staff, Mike Gundy included, and they brought him back. He's the biggest quitter of them all. So it all comes from the top. And I think you're 1,000% right on what you said about respecting the guys in the locker room, the coaches that you play for, and the head coach that you play for, especially. I think that, again, it's a lot of sour grapes, the same kind of stuff that you heard whenever you ended up getting Trace Ford coming over as well. Look, the bottom line is that Okie Light has proven that just what we kind of talked about all heading into Oklahoma leaving the SEC was that, look, you're not just going to show up now and win the Big 12. And they were just sure that was going to happen. What do? They go 0-9. They go 0-9. You can't even get them up enough to win a damn football game in a conference that no longer has Big Brother or Texas in it. So I just think it's a bad look on Okie Light, but it's not new. It's not a new look on them. Last time they were wishing injury, season or career-ending injury on Trace Ford whenever he left. Same thing with Kelly. With the softball program, it was it's par for the course for those folks up in Stillwater. So it is what it is. I think that he's a hell of an addition. He is. I think that Deshaun McCullough is actually a really good comp because this dude seems to be in the backfield an awful lot. they can send him on some stunts. He's going to do some things like that. I think he'll do a great job at linebacker, cleaning up his tackling, some of that other stuff. Yeah, I could see you wanting him to do that, but I don't think that, again, I do not see effort being an issue with this kid. He's coming into a situation, playing in the SEC, a new chance to prove himself, and he's probably going to get quite a bit of playing time right off the bat, with Stutzman out, and also losing Lewis Carter. He's going to get an opportunity to step in and make some money for himself at the next level this year.
If I may add some commentary before Chris Mason goes, he's a guy that helps you out where Deshaun McCullough couldn't. And love Deshaun McCullough. Was in the comments on the show and all the rest of that stuff this past summer. But biggest thing for me is just the fact that the kid, he's not going to get caught flat-footed. So some of those wheel routes, different things like that, he's shown that he can cover at a decent level. So I think that's a guy that you can say, hey, when we get into SEC play, deep into SEC play, and they're running some of these bigger tight ends or bigger this, bigger that, unless Dolby is there and Dolby is 100% or whatnot, you're probably saying, hey, we can use this kid and keep him on the field, and we can actually kind of go into these bigger sets opposed to having to call an early timeout just because the personnel is not matching up. Now we got Deshaun McCullough on whoever their slot guy is, right? Their little fast guy that's just running down the field. He's not getting caught flat-footed on anything like that with a running back either. So he's a guy that kind of gives you that. He's at 240 right now, I believe. I'd like to see him between 225 to 230. That's just me personally. I'd like to see him kind of get a little bit of that quickness back. But at the same time, going in there with Smitty, if he pays attention to detail and does everything he needs to do with Smitty, I think whatever size he plays at is going to be fine. But Chris Mason, what are your thoughts about Kendall Daniels coming to OU?
Well, I mean, I think, when it first happened, we hadn't lost Lewis Carter and Deshaun McCullough, I think, when we first talked about him, way back. And now with those two exits, I think he hits a nice sweet spot. I think he potentially allows you to maybe play Sam O more at Will or Mike and move Sam O out of the Cheetah rotation and get Sam O giving us more linebacker depth, which I think is the best move for him career-wise overall, because I think Sam O at Will or Mike could be just a beast. So I think there's the added benefit of that. I think he provides you, as you said, he can play what I like to call the big cheetah role. He can also play Sam linebacker, because we do play bigger schemes and bigger, we're not just seeing five wides all the time. So I think, there's a way you can get Dolby and Kendall Daniels on the field. And if, everyone says, well, he's the lack of effort and, lack of motor. Well, that's not going to last very long with Skowski and Brent coaching him up, during spring. It'll be, if that's really a problem, then it'll be resolved one way or the other real quick. So I don't see the downside with it. Obviously, he's a senior. He has 1 year of eligibility. So that's if you want to say that's a negative, okay. But I think, he's had a lot of experience. He's played really well. He's got the frame and attributes that you want for the big cheetah, for whatever we're calling the Sam linebacker these days in this OU 4-3 defense. So I think, Penn State really wanted him. We know Penn State's playing really good defense and putting guys in the pros. And of all the James Franklin issues I have, the guy running their defense isn't one of them. Their defense is rock solid. So, Penn State really wanted him. So I think I think he got over, I think he just kind of got over the fact that OU had burned him in the past and he'd been at OSU and took the rational view of what OU is, a program that has really good linebacker coaches, really good linebacker. The linebackers are featured, and he's like, and again, everyone says, was there some effort problems this year? As Jason said, they were getting punched by everybody. We saw some effort issues with our team during some of those games we don't really want to talk about, right? It creeps in everywhere. So I don't think that's much of an issue. And if it is, he won't play. I mean, you're not going to loaf and play for Brent. I mean, I did those two things don't add up, right? I mean, we all know that. So I think it's a good addition, especially factoring in the losses OU suffered in the portal. Gives OU some time I think it allows OU to move Samo to Mike or Will, or maybe a combo of the both, which I think is a big move for OU's defense in the future and for OU's defensive depth. So I don't. It's a win-win in two places, right? We get Samo in the right where he needs to be to maximize his great talent, and we also get depth at nickel linebacker, Sam linebacker, Big Cheetah. So it's a win. It's one of these win-wins. Like, it helps OU's roster in two places where you did worry a little bit after losing Lewis Carter and Deshaun McCullough. What would you do at will linebacker if something happened to Kip Lewis? And now your answer is, well, Sam Amasigo plays it.
Does it now? And I'll lead this to the panel, but does bringing in Kendall Daniels, does it allow you to make Samuel more expendable as far as moving him back inside? Like, I mean, that's been the talk, but is this a move that truly allows you to do that?
I think it does. I mean, you have Daniels who can, we've got Bogo and Powers who are both, Bogo's already 215? Yeah. Powers is 200, 205, or be 210 by the time we probably play next fall? Two guys who could, Dolby's coming back. You've got Jaden Hardy. Marcus Wimberly also could probably be 205, 210 as well, although he's already in absurdly good shape. I think you've got the players at Cheetah. This frees up Samo to now be your third linebacker. You've got that three linebacker rotation. You've got the players you need there. If for some reason James Nesta is not quite ready to be in the two deep, you've got a little protection there based upon that. Although, James Nesta could have a big spring and surprise us all. We just don't know. We don't know anything about his first. He was redshirting, so we don't know anything about that. But I do think it allows you to consider playing Samo more at Will and Mike, which I think he struggled at Cheetah. And to me, you put Samo at Will. I mean that hunts as far as I'm concerned defensively. I mean, that kid is physically a beast, and you put him there and let him eat reps there. I think that that really works. So to me, this is where the Daniels thing, I think accelerates and helps OU's overall defensive development.
And I think that you don't see a comment here talking about Marvin Jones Jr., Kendall Daniels. Can they, in 1 year, make a seamless transition to BV system? I think they can, because I think some of what you have to look at, and I'm gonna go back and say a name that you probably haven't heard in a while, Marcus Stripling, right? Marcus Stripling really didn't have a fit in those 2 years. Granted, he was always just so injury prone. Didn't really have a fit. Trace Ford didn't necessarily have a true fit, but they had that utility role that they wanted him to play in, right? And they came in and they played at different spots. Hell, Trace Ford was playing Cheetah at points in this season, just showing his versatility and his athleticism. So, I mean, the thing is that they're going to find a way for these guys to be successful on the field. And I think what they'll do for them, especially Kendall Daniels, I don't think that they're going to put them in any awkward situations. And to be honest with you, playing in that 3-3-5 and kind of going and playing what really, let's be honest with you, he was a box safety there at OSU. He wasn't really – he played safety, but at times a lot they had him there close to the ball too. Saw him there a lot and saw him make – I did see him make tackles. Seen him make some good tackles. Also, running backs coming through that hole. So the thing is that he's gonna be a guy that you can say, hey, don't think the game out like they were trying to make you. Be instinctual. Be react, because that's what this BV system is on. You have to react. People, if you don't believe it, talk to my good friend Ty Hayes around the table sports. He will tell you BV will put you in a position. Every dude that's on the field on defense is going to be around the football. You just have to make the play. Right.
Well, and I think that's why would you make it difficult for a guy that's got 1 year left? If you're out there putting money out there for him in the portal, you're going to want to put him in a position to be successful and help your football team.
There's a plan. You're not just taking the best available. You don't have time for that. And I don't think BV has time for that. This is a contract year for just about everybody that's involved. Speaking of that, well, before we get to that, again, people hit that like button, subscribe, all 3 channels, Patreon for Chris Mason, members only section for Jason. Come on, y'all. Let's get it. But moving on to Marvin Jones Jr. Okay. This is what I'm going to say about this kid here. The size, the intangibles, all the rest of the stuff. People, if you are in here and you are an Ethan Downs fan, I salute you. Ethan Downs was phenomenal for what he was worth. However, R. Mason Thomas needs help not only from the offense, getting leads, being able to stay with other offenses, being able to keep us in the game. That right there, enough said. Offense has to be better. However, defensively, on that defensive line, you're going to get pressure from inside. I believe that. Jaden Jackson always seems to literally. It's like he's got oil on his jersey or something. David Stoney, I think Stone is going to take a huge leap. Williams, again, year 2 will be better than year 1. Yeah. But here's what I have to say. On that other side, whether it be Okoye, whether it be PJ, whether it be Nigel Smith, Wyatt Gilmore, or Marvin Jones Jr., RMT is going to need help. They're going to double team him. They're going to do all types of stuff and run all types of mini games towards his side. So who does that free up? That frees up a 6'5", 250-plus guy in Marvin Jones Jr. that has a ton of NFL talent that has yet to be tapped into. I've heard knocks on him. Shout out to my boy Brady Chantham through the Keyhole podcast. I've heard lots of noise about this guy. He's lazy. He quit. He didn't make it at Georgia. He quit at Georgia because he couldn't get on the field. Then I heard, he went to Florida State and he wasn't good on that. Okay, I get that. This is a contract year, people. And what I had to say is this right here. What I said earlier, first point, Miguel Chavis. If you're trying to question this kid's effort, his motor, every guy that's came to play for Miguel Chavis, some people question getting Caden Woolard. Oh, he's coming from small school. He doesn't know. This is the SEC. You saw max effort out of the kid. God forbid he gets 1 more year, and you could have really seen what kind of player he could have been in this system. Trace Ford. Nobody knew if Trace Ford was going to even be able to play. He didn't play his first spring. He didn't do anything in spring. The hell, barely did anything in the summer except for lift weights. You saw the progression he made from year 1 to year 2. Come on, man.
And he made some plays in year 1.
He
made some plays at different times throughout year 1.
Yes, you got to remember, you can't judge these kids just off of what happened this year, that stop and that stop. There's a reason you're going to get these kids. But, and as my friend Jay would say, competitive death, everybody drink to that, right? Absolutely. It's going to add value and competitive depth to that room. Why? I watched Danny Okoye at the Texas game. He wasn't suited up, people. I saw him. I know that feeling when you red shirt. I know that personally.
He was pissed.
Got something to prove. PJ Adebawore has something to prove. There's a lot to prove. Taylor Wine, Wyatt Gilmore, they want to be in that rotation. Nigel Smith, itching to get on the field. Yep. This is a move right here that catapults your DN room. And at some point, you got to say, to me, Marvin Jones Jr. right now, you got to pencil him in as a starter, as opposite of R. Mason Thomas. But you're sitting there saying to yourself, you got Nigel Smith, Danny Okoye, Taylor Wine, and then Wyatt Gilmore, right? Mm-hmm. 4 guys that I just named. 4 guys we were all excited about when we got. 2 of those guys are going to have to take a huge leap. 2 of them. We need 2 of those guys. Oh, and PJ Adebawore. I'm sorry. It's 5 guys. We need at least 2 out of those 5 guys to step up to have a solid rotation. Because like I said earlier, Jason, Chris Mason, whatever y'all want to say, it's got to be early and often this year. We don't have time to wait until the 4th quarter. Even if it's a close game or whatever the case may be, you need to be in there early and often. Sacks can't come in the last minute of the game this year. We got to have it early and often.
Listen, I would agree with that to an extent.
Hold on, let me finish and I'll give the mic to you. 2 out of those 5 guys have to take a leap, and that's what you're asking this summer. That is going to be that to me. That is one of the most underrated and least talked about rooms or just stories, top stories going into this whole spring and summer semesters. 2 out of those 5 young guys have to step up.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of it had to do with the fact that, look, there was just so much respect for Ethan Downs in that room from everywhere it was. I mean, BV said from day one of last year that nobody had a spot on that defense except for Ethan. He said it. And so, look, there were some things that he did very well last year. I know you guys like to shit on him a little bit. Chris, still, even after everything that he did that year when we were both dogging him, you're still doing it. You're still doing it. And he was a guy that would set the edge. He made a lot of plays. He wasn't getting a lot of sacks. We knew that was never going to be his strength. Mm-hmm. We knew that. But it was his strength to shut down a run. It was his strength if a running quarterback tried to get out of the pocket and onto that side of the field. Plain and simple. And look, I think that obviously the talent, I've been saying this a ton, we're going to continue saying it. The floor has been raised on all over the defense, the ceiling and the floor. Because these guys are better when they get here. They're better when they get here than they were. I think that you're going to have a hard time keeping Danny Okoye off the field. I think you're going to have a hard time keeping PJ off the field. I think you might end up having a hard time I really feel like you're going to have a hard time keeping Nigel off the field, and I think that he's going to probably split time between both positions a little bit, right? It feels like that has to be because you really only have, 4 guys in the all-the-time rotation there? So, yeah. Yep, see? Sugoi, everybody's with me on this. You always dogging on him. Where's Unc in here? Where's Unc in here? I saw you in here earlier. Come in here and talk to me about it. Bottom line, yeah, it was a master class against the run. These guys are doing we knew that he didn't have the speed and quick twitch to be able to get to the quarterback all the time. We understood that. But again, yeah, that run defense was important, definitely important. And he made plays at very timely. I mean, look at what he did that we kind of squandered against Kansas last year. He gets an interception, dropping back out of that position and gets an interception that they needed to get. Now, they didn't do anything with it, but, no more strays for Ethan Downs for me. None. So, yes, is it time for some of these other guys to step up and for us to probably lead the SEC in sacks? Absolutely. I'm with you.
So do you not think that the DN room could be better moving forward?
I think it can because there's more talent in the room. Yes, I just said that.
So to me, the Marvin Jones thing is all about risk reward, right? Okay, so Ethan Downs on a shaky defense was a consistent performer the last 2 years. You knew what you were getting out of him, and there was a lot of guys that weren't playing that well, that weren't consistently playing. So Marvin gives you a much higher ceiling. Like if Chavis presses the right buttons motivationally, and Marvin sees that this is, as you would say, a contract year for him, if he plays really well, and he's got a defensive end on the other side that's gonna occupy attention. Teams now know who R. Mason Thomas was. Before it's like, who's that three initial dude OU fans keep talking about? Well, they now know, right? We know he proved it in SEC play. So to me, Marvin Jones Jr. is it's a risk reward. In some areas, OU's defensive end ceiling is sky high. I mean, Okoye, Marvin Jones, and PJ. I mean, that's three. I mean, Danny Okoye should have been a 5-star top 30 player in the country. He was that good out of high school. We know PJ and we know Marvin as well. So you've got three guys that, have 5-star type talent. Can Chavis push the right buttons motivationally and developmentally to get him playing? That's the question. I love the risk because if Marvin Jones can hit it and you can press the right buttons, what's his ceiling? His ceiling is 15 tackles for loss, 8 to 10 sacks, and 45 tackles. That's his ceiling, right? That was never going to be Ethan Downs' ceiling. Now, the floor is something different. He won't be as consistent playing the run as Ethan Downs will be. He won't. But you can get more sacks, more big tackles for loss, more plays. And if he starts rolling, that ball, again, same thing with PJ. If you can get that boulder moving downhill in the right direction, the ceiling is sky high. So I like the addition in the room. He's got 1 year. He's not going to hold back too much developmental time from everybody else. He gives us depth. We lost 3 guys that played massive amount of snaps for us. Woolard, Trace Ford, and Downs. So you add us, he's a veteran. He's played 3 years. Let's just be honest. OSU's defense and FSU's defense, other than both being agricultural schools, have a little bit more in common last year. FSU's defense was a quit. It was not just Marvin Jones that wasn't playing with a high level of effort. Once that team went in the tank, they quit on Mike Norvell on both sides of the ball. Wasn't like the OU roster where our defense pretty much played. There's not a game where I think they really quit. Not really. Texas game got a little bit out of hand, and I think they started trying to make plays instead of trying to make big plays instead of just trying to make plays. But I think Marvin Jones, we mentioned when he first went in the portal, this is interesting. I'd like OU to kick the tires on this, see where they are. He still had folks really wanting him. Penn State again. Texas, he went to Texas. Texas really wanted him. So this is a win. Did you spend a little coin here? Yeah, but this is the sort of free agency move again that successful NFL front offices make, right? Both Daniels and Jones, right? Pull them off bad defenses, get them coached up, and maximize their potential. That's what you do in the NFL, right? You're looking at the Bengals defense for a guy who's playing really well and is just out of position. This is the sort of thing you do. This is what the Patriots, the Steelers, not the Patriots this year because we know why that thing fell apart. But like the teams that are playing well, watch. It's like the Chiefs adding Hollywood Brown and the other guy, the other big name wide receiver, right, for nothing. This is what OU did. They didn't pay top dollar here, but they got athletes who fit their scheme, who replace players they've lost in the free agency. And I would say the ceiling, the Daniels McCullough ceiling is probably pretty even. But when you think about Marvin Jones' ceiling, if it clicks, he could put up 10 sacks, 10, 15 tackles for loss, and RMT can also eat on the other side. And we're going to have enough games and have to play enough guys that he's pushing it. Then and then Okoye, Nigel Smith, or Tyler Wine. Personally, I want Wyatt Gilmore at blocking tight end. Sorry, you watch his high school tight end footage. You want somebody who will just bury people. Just watch Wyatt Gilmore bury people at tight end. But I think it's a good. It takes the defense. Chavis has a good defensive end room. It takes all the pressure off C.J. Nixon and rolling late. He can redshirt, come in in the summer, and you can have him ready for next year because you've got Marvin Jones Jr. And if you've got an injury or two, Marvin Jones helps you, right? You've got better depth, you've got more experience, and you've got a guy with a tremendous upside. It's a win-win for OU. They hung around with Marvin, didn't overpay him, got him back on campus, got him back to, because he should have verbal to us out of high school. And he wouldn't be in this situation if he had, because Brent would have got him at defensive end, playing defensive end in our 4-3 scheme from like day one, right? So, he almost verbally got him back on campus. He's seeing, okay, these are the guys, I some of the guys I was recruited with, and I think, OU was able to then get him at the number they wanted. And that, again, is a sign of an effective front office.
I just know that it's been too long, and hell, I hate to even date back to that, but it's been too long since we saw Benito and Isaiah Thomas at our edge being able to go get sacks.
Well, that's where the competitive depth comes in too, like what you were talking about a few minutes ago. When you've got that many guys that want playing time, I mean, I can tell you when I saw Danny Okoye in the stands at the Red River game, he was pissed off about being one of those guys that ended up having a red shirt. Pissed off. You could tell he was upset about it. There was things that you've seen some things on Twitter where he's been emotional about it a little bit. These guys all want to get on the field. You don't think CJ Nixon wants to find a way to get himself on the field the first year, whether he comes in early or not?
On the field, Jason, but like I said, man, we need production.
That's the point, though. That depth is what iron sharpening iron is where it's at. And you can sit here and like blame all this on.
I'm telling you, this is a year, man. We try. I think a lot of people.
Where's all this negativity coming from is what I'm trying to get at. I don't understand it. You got to quit talking about this situation.
Got to happen this year. Jobs are on
my board.
We can't sit here and do the whole coach speak each this time out for that.
Jobs You're not going to get on the field unless you're performing. Is the point? There's enough dudes in that room that you wouldn't get on the field unless you're performing.
And the problem is that these kids need time. They need reps opposed to just setting the edge and being consistent at what? When you go back and watch the replays and see how many times they're going inside and Ethan Downs is just coming wide open. Nobody's blocking him.
Did you lose a case today? Did you lose a case today?
Factor. I'm just telling you, these kids needed reps. You're not getting them reps. You're the same person who said last year, you know what, man, Jackson Arnold should have been getting reps. He should have been playing. He should have had this. He should have been that. Now you're not saying that. Where's that Jason at?
Who was saying that? I said that he needed to get reps if they were going to be planning to play him without fail and I was also the one that said you better keep Dylan Gabriel around while you guys are like, nah, get his ass out of here. He can't even throw.
All right, let's not relitigate that particular story. But I think
you saw how
look. I think again, Ethan played well. He gave you. You knew what you were getting down in, down out. Right. We don't have that this year. It's a chance for Chavis to move the needle a little higher, a little more impact plays, both tackles for loss and sacks from both sides. It's a chance to, you've built up. Chavis done a good job recruiting the defensive end room, right? Let's just call it what it was. He's done a good job there. Okay. If you say he hasn't, you've got some weird agenda against him, and I don't know what, right?
Yeah, what is it, Kchris? What is it?
Anyway, so you got some weird.
We got to see it this year. It's got to be developed.
And his guys have improved. His guys improved year over year after we got done with the whole Grimes nonsense at defensive end and some of that stuff. Just like linebacker got better once we no longer had a 6'4", 250-pound defensive end playing middle linebacker, right? So once you want, the Brent's first year defense, just throw it out, right? It's a mismatch of the wrong pieces. If we'd had NIL today back then, if we'd had that in place, OU would return Isaiah Thomas, Nick Benito, Brian Asamoah, Jalen Redmond, and probably Winfrey. And then that defense would have been entirely different. It would have given Brent a year to get his other guys in and bought him a year of, you lost all of those guys who are now all playing in the NFL for the most part. I mean, even Deshaun White's on an NFL roster right now. He's on the Niners roster. So you're talking about, you lost all of those guys that he never had a chance to really develop and play with. So I think Marvin Jones Jr., again, it's a sign that OU is willing to spend some money, stick to that dollar amount, and get the guy that they feel like has the biggest upside, that their coaching staff can bring out that final piece with Marvin Jones, and we'll see what happens. But it would be if both those guys click and are draftable NFL defensive ends, Chris, that changes the story for OU. I mean, it does. I mean, the linebacker story and the safety story we'll get from Stutz and Bowman changing things around. Jonah Lealu's playing in the NFL. If we'd had him for an extra year at the right position, that would have been huge as well. So I think Dejon Terry is going to end up having a good NFL career. So I think you're going to see, once you start getting those Sooner guys drafted and playing under this coaching staff on the defensive side of the ball, it's going to help. It's going to help greatly. So I think, if Marvin Jones clicks this year, that's just a win-win for everybody, right? OU did what FSU and Georgia staff couldn't do. Turned him into an NFL player.
Which would be crazy because you know how Georgia is. But I mean, look, it's high risk, high reward with that kid. He's got to have it. Either that or he's not going to play. Same with Kendall Daniels.
Well, I mean, I think, and again, just like at Georgia, he's going to walk into the defensive end room and Danny Okoye, Nigel Smith, and PJ aren't really going to be that impressed. Okay, dude, you're 6'5", 255. Okay, well, Okoye's like, well, I'm 6'3", 255, and I run a 4.55. So, and I can do a standing backflip. So, big deal, dude. So I think that'll help. But I think, R. Mason Thomas coming back with that room with Marvin Jones Jr. and the other guys behind him. Marvin gives you a level of insurance in case someone gets hurt or development just goes askew with somebody. He gives you some insurance there. And again, if you click the motivational buttons correctly, same thing with Daniels. Because if Daniels has a kick-ass year at nickel linebacker, I mean, that's an NFL spot every NFL team needs, right? And he has the physical, he's got the length, he's got the size, and he's got the speed to be an NFL nickel linebacker. So again, if you click and get all those motivational buttons going right, then I think it'll work for you. These are both two really good, two good gambles. But I think OU's not done yet, and I think we need to talk about the other name that's floating out there. That's not quite that's floating out there. So
go ahead, Chris Mason.
Yeah, what is that name?
That name would be Owen Waffle. From Michigan, 6'2", 6'3", 298 pounds. Chose Michigan over OU. Good friends with Logan Howland, who I think we can all it's not going to surprise any of us if Logan is our starting left tackle for the next 2 years. Owen, I mean, we'll talk about some other things that could interrupt that, but regardless, Logan Howland's his good friend. Owen's leaving Michigan. He redshirted, so he would be a true freshman this fall, which would mean that he would be a great complement in the class structure to what we have on the D-line. And I just rewatched his junior film, and the guy is just obliterating people. I mean, he also plays goal line fullback, blocking fullback, and just abuses people. So if you wanted to think about you could run X-Rob behind him at 298 pounds, him at fullback. That seems like that might work to pick up a yard against Navy if you need one. Owen Waffle he's probably going to visit Penn State and Rutgers just because he's from New Jersey. But I think OU has a great chance here. And his brother, Luke Waffle, in 2026 is a 6'6", 245-pound menace off the edge. And he's got a huge Owen's got long arms for an interior defensive lineman. So he's a 3-tech or with him and Trenton Wilson, that could be 2 more guys to add to your defensive line rotation to add depth there, shuttle guys in, play more, which is always what you want. And you've got your development. You've got 2 development defensive tackles behind Jackson and Stone, who are both to be sophomores. So, Owen Waffle, if OU could close the deal on that adds the defensive line piece that you've been looking for. I mentioned before the problem OU was finding on the D line were the upperclassmen they were trying to recruit wanted to start, and they were seeing themselves stuck behind Grayson Holton, Dominic, Stone, and Jackson. So, and the guys that OU could get, they just weren't moving the needle any. They just weren't really going to provide any real depth. Well, now you get this guy who, plays like an escaped mental patient rushing the pass, hitting folks. So I think overall it's good. We could have another addition to the defense, 4-year guy. OU's also looking at Sterling Dixon, a linebacker who just left Alabama. He again redshirted. I watched his high school film. It's really good. That would be a young linebacker that worked with Nesta to build those numbers up. So OU seems to be paying some attention to backfilling some roster gaps, not just playing for tomorrow, which they got to do, because you're right, it's a contract year, but they're also seem to be picking up some freshmen who have a lot of athletic ability, who could be coached up in this program. If I'm a young linebacker, I don't know why you wouldn't choose being coached up by Venables. I mean, it would be on my top 4 list. So it's kind of maybe proves that Zach Alley is a terrible recruiter. So those are the two guys. The one area that Chris and Jason appears that OU's having some isn't finding any luck in is that cornerback. Ethan O'Connor chose Miami. The Washington DB that it looked like OU was trying to contact, Thaddeus Dixon, looks like he's going to choose either Michigan or North Carolina or go back to Washington. So that puts OU maybe back to the drawing board at corner, which I think we all recognize we'd like. I mean, if Gentry Williams has healthy shoulders, we don't have a corner problem. We know that, right? But we've also just seen 2 years of Gentry Williams not having a healthy shoulder. So what are you supposed to do there? And I love the guys coming in. And Jacoby Johnson, certainly has all the traits if he can start putting it together. I think the whole wide receiver thing kind of, that was a bad idea, but OU was scrambling and it was all bad ideas. So, but I think that's the one area you see OU maybe they're not going to come out of this January time period with a guy with a depth piece that they want. Is it going to be at cornerback?
You got Tristan Haynes coming in, but you also, got to think about what you have on campus too. Devon Jordan, the Newcomb kid.
They're both a little. Newcomb's a little small.
Yeah.
Devon Jordan's is longer. It's just, I know Eli Bowen doesn't play like a small cornerback, but we see so many beast type monsters in the SEC at wide receiver. I'd love a big corner to be the complement to go with him. Now, Tristan Haynes, Jacoby Johnson, Courtney Guillory, Malik Hawkins, all fit that. They have those measurables. Would it be nice to have somebody with some experience to be able to plug in there? It would be, but it's again, apparently Miami just started upping the money so high that at some point OU just said, you know what? He's just not worth that. At some point, we have to just back off. He's not worth that. So we'll see where we are. Maybe OU goes through spring and sees where all their young cornerbacks are and decides this isn't the need we thought it was. Maybe if Gentry's able to go through some spring stuff and you're like, okay, those two things combined, maybe allows you to, not need a cornerback, but it's a risk right now, I think. OU obviously has identified that, wanted a cornerback. It's weird. I think that the Thaddeus Dixon guy might go back to Washington, even though the big Arizona cornerback, Tecario Davis, I think his name is, appears to be heading to Washington to play for his old coach, Jed Fish. So that's the one area where it looks like OU may strike out. And then, I'm not sure if they're going to get Sterling Dixon, the linebacker, but they're obviously making a heavy attempt to get him on campus and try and close that deal. I think we could hear in 48 hours that OU's has gotten Owen Waffle because they do. I mean, they have a longer term connection with him. I think him visiting OU sort of first was a good sign. If he was just looking to go back home, why would you go visit OU?
Yeah.
So if if he's looking to go home, he would just visit Rutgers and announce for Rutgers. So I think there's a good chance that OU could pick up Owen Waffle, and then that could put them in great space for Luke Waffle at defensive end, and Luke is a pass rushing demon off the edge. And Hunt Academy just has players every year. You want to build a minor Hunt Academy pipeline? That doesn't hurt either.
So I would say, as far as corner, I like the guys that we have on campus that are incoming as well. But I think that second portal window is going to be when you would see some work. I mean, isn't that when they got Des Malone last year?
No, I think he came in
the first window. Was he on the fall? He
was the January window. But yeah, I mean, people ask me, are you going to pick up another wide receiver? I think OU could wait until after spring and see where they are, and then see if they need a wide receiver. I think that could be what OU does. Tight end, I'm not talking about tight end until we have a new tight end coach.
I'm not even going to force you to.
It's just not. It's just like, I'll give you a choice. You can come to my home office, hit me with a stick 15 times, and I choose that over discussing the tight end situation. So when we have a new tight end coach, I'm happy to go in depth into every element of it. But as long as we have the current dude, it's not worth the
I'm
the
not
energy.
a big fan of the guys that they're offering you. At least with the receivers, it was production based. You'd seen some production on these guys.
Yeah, but you've got Emmett Jones, and Emmett Jones pulled the Josiah Martin kid from Cali. That's really just high school recruiting a year later, right? That basically they've had so much turnover.
He showed some signs of what he can do, though.
Yeah, Emmett Jones. And everyone's like, well, he only got like 111, 115 total yards. Well, they redshirted him. He only played like 3 games, and in the bowl game when he actually did play, he had nearly 100 yards of total offense. So I like the addition. It's Dallas high school guy that I like keeping those connections. Generally speaking, we should only be signing wide receivers from Dallas, from Texas and Oklahoma, right? There's enough Texas wide receiver talent that we should really, between them and the Mason James and the Elijah Thomases that come up and those kind of guys, that's what we should do. But I think wide receiver is a position they look at. And again, I'd love tight end gets another look when we have a real tight end coach.
Is this true what Zofix is saying? JJ is staying on staff until next year?
No, I don't think so. Everybody tells me no, but who knows? Until he's gone, he's not gone, right? It's like Mike Stoops, right? Mike Stoops was fired like 15 times before he was actually let go. According to, people insisted and told me, Mike Stoops is gone. I'm like, okay, all right. And he would still be there the next week. And I'm like, okay. What does your source say now? Well, I'm like, okay. Same thing with Jay. My sources say he's gone. He will be not on the staff. Sooner in Texas, I'd love for that to be true, but I just don't know that it's possible. But yeah, so that's where we are, Chris. With the
can't expect it till you see it, right?
Yeah, that's where we are, Chris, with the portal.
I have one more question, Chris Mason.
Yeah,
running back room.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna say it like this right here. It's 2025, and JJF and Sam Franklin are still on the team.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know why he hasn't hit the portal to find somewhere else to go. Maybe now strategically, if I was Sam Franklin, I would sort of lightly work out with OU, and I would hit the portal in April when teams find a more of a need for running back. Injuries have occurred. This is the vulture part of this, right? If I was a guy right about now, and I was looking for somewhere to go, I'd wait for a team that is a little more desperate than right now. If I'm Sam Franklin, who doesn't have a lot of film at OU, has good film from, was it Middle Tennessee State? Was that right? Was it Middle Tennessee?
Was it Tennessee Chattanooga?
Tennessee Chattanooga? It was okay. I remember it. It was Tennessee. It was the smallest school in Tennessee. Okay.
Missy Martin.
Yeah. So if I was him, I would be waiting for after spring, right? Okay. X team lost the running back in the portal. 2 guys got hurt. They're scrambling. Now's my time to hit the portal and be a little more attractive. That's what I would do. I think you're going to see some quarterbacks. Should be a strategy. That's a bunch of players. I think we're technically at like 81 right now. Bishop Frank's asking our scholarship numbers. I think we're like right around 81. With some guys like Michael Patterson McDonald, what his status is kind of a little up in the air. And there's some other names like that. Some of the guys we brought in at tight end are maybe preferred walk-ons. So the 105 number is also floating out there. I don't think we're going to know any of that until, post-spring and have a better idea of some of the moving elements of that. But that's from a portal standpoint. I don't think OU needs any portal talent at running back. They just need an offensive scheme where the running backs know what they're doing. If you want to change the running back coach, I'm fine with that. I'm convinced that I think DeMarco probably needs to move to the NFL. I think that's probably the fact that his senior running.
Coming?
Sorry?
Is that coming?
I don't know. I don't know. I think it could be. I think NFL teams like him, and I think the running backs he's coached are doing well in the NFL. So I think that could easily happen. He's got a lot of connections there. So I think that probably might be the best move for all involved, because DeMarco can obviously recruit. No one can question that. And he's obviously developed in 21, 22, and 23. He developed sort of veteran college running backs. So we'll talk about how great DeMarco is. I think DeMarco is probably too much of an old school hard ass, and the mistakes the young guys are making are just weighing his mind too much for them to play. Does that make sense? Like he's coaching them. That he's coaching them. Just a theory. It's a theory that they're making too many mistakes, and that's why we don't see them always getting pushed to the forward as much as we would like. There's some injury stuff there, obviously, that's hurt him. Well, I mean, 23, not this year. In 23, Barnes and Sawchuk being hurt, obviously, that kind of threw off what he was planning to do. But that's just a theory. I think we may see a DeMarco change. I think he may decide to just take a pro job. I think Jay Valai, there's a lot of mentions about Jay. If we're talking any more coaching changes, I think Jay Valai is also a possibility. He wants to be a DC somewhere. I think if an opportunity opens up for that, I think you can see Jay Valai grabbing that. But other than that, I think, at DC, I think I'd be surprised next week if we don't hear something about Wes Goodwin moving in, becoming the defensive coordinator, linebacker coach. I wouldn't surprise me if that happened, because, he's now free. OU doesn't have to pay his buyout from Clemson or anything like that. So you can get him onto a contract that makes sense for them for what the DC really means at OU. We don't need to be paying some guy $5 million a year to be DC, and Brent's really our DC. So
yes, how you feel about bringing Wes Goodwin in, if that were to happen?
I don't mind them bringing him in. I don't think you have to bring him in as coordinator and pay him all that money.
I think he has the title, but he doesn't have. They don't pay him a bunch of cash.
Yeah, maybe he has the title. I don't care. To me, I've been saying this a little bit the last few days. Is it doesn't make a shit who it is. Who's running it? We already know who's running it. It was Ben BV. It was BV with Zach Alley. We know that Alley was wanting to run a lot of 3-3-5, and he wasn't going to do it. So let's just be real about it. His ass is on the line here. You think he's going to hand this off to somebody that just got fired? Probably not.
No, he does have a lot of connections with Goodwin. Goodwin knows the scheme, so it would be the things we need. The things we need Goodwin to do as DC or defensive,
analyst.
Well, it's not. We need him to run practice. We need him to run practice, right? When Brent's tied up with other stuff, right? We need him to teach the linebacker job. He can do that. We need him to be able to transmit the defense to other to young players and get them up to speed, teach the scheme. I think he can do all of these things, but as Jason said, nuts and guts play calling on game day. It's Brent, or Brent through Goodwin, with all the development, the planning, and preparation they do. So I think if that happens, it's fine. We just got Daniels and Marvin Jones without a DC, right? They weren't very concerned that there's no defensive coordinator, right?
Yeah, we didn't get anybody until the DC left.
Well, okay.
None of this fell their way until the DC left.
So I think that's all. Good there. Jason and Chris, I got some high school notes for you guys if you want to close and wrap up that, since high school recruiting is about to get going again.
Yeah, we can. Go ahead.
Well, the first one is I watched a replay. I don't know why they thought showing the Under Armour game against the Sugar Bowl was a good idea, but they did. So the Under Armour All-American game was on at the same time as the Sugar Bowl, so no one watched it, right?
Yeah.
So I watched a replay of it. Now the guys who were all there, and that was mostly On3 guys and some ESPN guys. Fasusi was the number one player all week, regardless of position. And the On3 guy, who has not always been, I think, accurate in OU evaluations, called him the best offensive lineman he's seen in the last 5 years at an All-Star game. He said he lost one rep all week in practice, and he was consistent and dominant at left tackle, right tackle, played both, and handled a bevy of highly regarded pass rushers with relative ease. So Michael Fasusi, probably On3, has him like the number 21 player in the nation right now. I think they'll do one last ranking reeval. I think he'll probably be in the top 10. The only offensive tackle I think who might be better than Michael ranking-wise is the David Sanders kid from North Carolina, who's going to Tennessee, who will be at the Navy game, which used to be the Army game, to make things more confusing. So the old high school Army All-American game is now the high school Navy All-American game. So the old Army game is now the Navy game. But Foji's at that, so we'll get a chance for him to compete with some high-profile offensive tackles. But the other thing is there were two other defensive ends that had really great weeks in practice. One was Jake Krull, who's from Florida at IMG, who's been to Norman 3 times so far this year. Last year he came to Norman 3 times, came for a game. Really loves OU. He's 6'3", 230, and he's the only guy who there's a massive 2026 offensive tackle. His last name is Ihenachu. He's just a monster. He's the number one player in the country, probably for 2026. Well, Krull's the only guy who could beat him in rip trails. His pass rush skills are that good. I mean, we're talking he's 6'3", 230, and this guy blocking him 6'7", 340, and Krull's the only guy beating him because he's that quick, that explosive, and his pass rush stuff is that well developed. And then the other guy is KJ Ford from Duncanville, who's been to OU like 5 times last year. OU battling Texas, obviously, he had a really good camp as well. Really shined out as one of the. They let 2026 kids go to the Under Armour game for the first time this year. It was a little weird, and he did really well. And obviously, if OU gets Owen Waffle, I like their chances with Luke Waffle, who's also another top 100, top 75 type defensive end. So Miguel Chavis could have a very, very good year this year from the recruiting ranks. He could pick up 3 top 100 defensive ends very easily.
So what about the decommitment that we just got?
Yeah. So Zane Rowe is the 2027 defensive end from Denton Guyer. Basically, he committed too early. He wants to take some visits. He talked it over with Chavis. And as you saw Chavis post on Twitter today, Chavis basically said, hey, look, if sophomores and freshmen who are committed are decommitting, fan bases don't go crazy. These kids need to spend some time and figure out where they really want to go. So I think basically he said to OU, I really want to take some visits. And OU said, why don't you decommit? We want you. We want you at Oklahoma. you've got some time to figure this out. Obviously, Chris, we know people are whispering in our recruits' ears that Brent's gone, right? They can just say, go look at OU message boards. Brent's fired. Brent's already fired. So obviously that's going to impact us in 2026 recruiting. So you could see a big movement, I think, in 2026 recruiting, Chris. If OU has success on the field, that all of a sudden that negativity blows away, and then OU could get a big leap, could get a bounce mid-season. So we'll see if they wait to get verbals or what goes on there. But I think OU will still very much recruit Zane Rowe. He'll look at OU, and by the time he's starting to make a new decision, the Brent thing, one way or the other, will be resolved, right? I mean, by January 2026, we better have a strong idea of who our coach is going to be moving forward, right?
Yeah.
So that's the high school stuff. OU's going to have some junior days at the end of the month on the 25th and probably February 2nd. There's a top defensive safety who's heavily mentioning OU. Let me get his name here. It is Caden Hall, and he's actively mentioning the job Brandon Hall's been doing with Billy Bowman and the OU's other safeties. He's like, I love the OU safety room. I love how they play. Billy Bowman's going to be an NFL draft pick. So you can starting to see Brandon Hall's rep is out there, among recruits, because Caden Hall is he's like the number 3 safety in the country. He is he's a big time player, 6'3", 200 pounds. 247 doesn't have him ranked as high as some other people, but he's from Florida. I haven't had a chance to look at his film yet, but his frame is exactly what you'd want at safety, 6'3", 200 pounds. He's from Florida, so I doubt that he's slow. But yeah, you can see Brandon Hall making some noise there. You can see that I think when Stutz goes, in the NFL draft, OU will have some noise there as well. But overall, you're starting to see high school recruiting get going again. There's one interesting name to watch, and his name is Sion Vane. He's originally from Cameroon, emigrated to Sweden, and is now playing high school football in Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
So Bates has obviously made a connection with him. I think Daniel Akinkimi knows him from NFL Europe. So he's a big kid, 6'5", 310, huge frame, big athlete, learning the game. And Todd Bates is making some impact there in that recruiting. But also OU, Bates has about 10 defensive tackles on the hook. So it's a good D-line year, and I think Bates will sign at least 3 or 4 guys.
So we've been on here for longer than an hour. You guys have got to see me and Jason go at it, which doesn't happen all that.
It's usually me arguing with Jason.
Huh? Yeah, it's true.
I even went on his pod and argued with him.
Yeah. Hey, look. So you got me and Jason going at it. Chris Mason spitting that gospel. You already know. Guys, give your closing thoughts. Jason, we'll start with you. As far as, did we get 2 difference makers? Are we headed in the right direction? Has OU made the right moves in the portal? I know I'm just asking all these questions, just throwing all these things at you just to talk about.
Yeah, I think that just the moves that they made were, if nothing else, it brings a lot of competition to the defensive end room. It brings some more competition there. It's your linebacker position. Kind of frees you up to be able to move Samuel to the inside linebacker position and maybe be able to use Kendall as a cheetah if Kendall Dolby's not completely healthy, and the way that I look at it, this defense is just starting to kind of find its legs. We saw earlier in the year, you had a lot of people talking about that it wasn't going to be a elite defense, and you've had some people even at the end of the year that, they gave up too many big plays. But I'll say again, whenever you're on the field for 70% of the plays in the game, you're going to give up a few, and they were still a top 15 unit. This is a unit that had you had just a little bit of, complimentary football, that we talked about, just a basically even just kind of decent offense, you're probably a lot better off. You go 6-6 for the regular season in a season that you probably shouldn't have. You know what I mean? With all the injuries, with all the, craziness that was going on within the offensive room, you still got people. Why is Joe John still not fired? Why is, Seth Luttrell, it took too long to fire him. I think you added the right guy when it came to your, yeah, there it is. You added the right guy when it came to your coordinator to be able to, you're able to go in there and pick up the number one player in the portal in John Mateer. You've got a good player already in the room in Michael Hawkins. They can battle it out. And you expect probably it's going to be Mateer that's going to end up with that job, but you're going to have two guys that can play. And you've got receivers that, guys, I think that if you take a really good look at who they have brought in as receivers, yeah, maybe they end up picking somebody else up down the line. But it was a pipe dream to think that Zachariah Branch was coming, because there's no room for his brother to get to play. There was just no room for that. There's too many guys
and you're not paying him either.
Right. You're not going to pay him to do that. And I think that you ended up, we said this a bunch, but I think Giovanni Gibson, the only reason that he wasn't already a SEC Division I receiver is because he had a little bit of some issues whenever he was a high school kid. He was running around with the wrong crowd, but he's the guy that put up huge numbers, huge production. If you don't even need probably half of that added with Burks doing something, Jaden Gibson doing something. You've got some guys. Elijah Thomas looks like he could be that dude. In the end, they don't really have to be a top 10 unit. What they have to be is a unit that can stay on the field, push out some 10-play drives, get enough points on the board that when you do have a 10, 12, 15-play drive, even if you don't put points on the board for all of them, you're keeping your defense on the sideline and able to kind of, help them to kind of take that next step forward as well. I think that you have all the talent in the world in the room. Obviously this is a season that's kind of make or break for Oklahoma and Brent Venables, but I would just tell you that in the end, this defense is going to be easily as good, I believe, as it was a year ago. And all you have to do is just be marginally better on offense, which it's a low bar to be marginally better on offense, to be quite honest with you. So I think you're going to have an opportunity there. Now, the schedule is grueling, which obviously, Benji, you wouldn't know nothing about that. But, it is what it is. And I think they're going to be okay.
Chris Mason?
Well, I think to echo Jason's point, let's not ignore, they got the best player in the portal at the most important position in football and at the position that OU needed to upgrade the most. So most impactful, best guy by a wide margin. The other quarterbacks out there, Mateer is better than anybody else in the portal. It's not even close, in my opinion. So you factor that in with and you factor in that he's playing for his offensive coordinator of last year. So you factor that what he can do to help install this offense is significant. I think if he will allow it and we can get the time, that Ben Arbuckle will turn Mike Hawkins into a great college quarterback. But just based on what we saw in the Navy game and all the things that Arbuckle will do and transform for him, I just hope we get to see it. But I do like the additions on the offensive line. Simmons is really good, and then the Balanco kid can play left and right. We needed more tackles. We got 2 tackles, and our tackle depth is much better. I like the wide receiver group. I think all 3 of those guys don't have to be superstars. If Burks and Gibson, one of those guys flashes, if Carry-On plays well or Kearney plays well, and then one of the freshmen clicks, we've got a wide receiver room again. It doesn't have to be all 4 of the portal wide receivers don't all have to be superstars. We have other guys that they can mesh with the former wide receiver room. So I'm less worried about that. Not talking about the tight end position. I love the fact that OU kept the defensive difference makers that they needed to. And I love the 2 additions now. If they add Owen Waffle as a third, I think would be another great addition. Again, the risk reward with Daniels and Jones is high, but if you hit, you potentially will have a better defense than last year. Because if you hit with Jones, you could have more pass rush, more big plays. But Jason's biggest point is, with how bad our offense was, our defense should have been like ranked number 50 in the nation, right? With how much they were out on the field and how little coverage they got from our offense, our defense should have been like ranked 50th, right? Should have given up more points, should have been in less games with how just god-awful our offense was. But if the offense can make, a 50% improvement, go from Jason, did we end the year like 125 or something, or 119? Probably something in the high teens?
In like scoring offense, yeah, I think it was like 117, 118, something like that.
And we were in that range from a whole bunch of offensive stats, right? Yeah. So if you could just get
in total defense, I think you were in the 90s, but it was still bad.
Total offense, you mean?
Yeah, total offense. Sorry, total offense.
But so Chris, if we can I think the pieces are in place in Norman to get to a top 45 type offense, top 50 offense, and then if you have that with the defense, which I think could look statistically and play better, maybe not actually be better. Does that make any sense? Just because the offense is better, that they're less vulnerable, they're out there less, they're able to attack offenses more with some leads. It's just the different, changing that whole structure of having a competent offense and what it does for the defense it's the Alabama game, right? That's the template, right? So I think the defense may not be actually better, but could look better and be statistically better because the offense is just it's
complementary.
It's you just how you change the numbers on things, right? So I think this, everybody's like, we're already picking up. I don't care where our kicker and punter come from. They could come from Tarleton State, Case Western, Wiley Post, the Colorado School of Mining and Technical Engineering,
Alaska Western.
Because nobody knows shit about punting and kicking anyway, right?
Yeah.
Let's just be honest. Nobody in our fan base really understands the technical aspect. Where did Elzinga come from, right? Give me a break. So the fact, and I think the Liam kid is going to be the kicker anyway, the Oklahoma City kid that he redshirted. So I think he's a backup kicker. And Kennesaw. So I think, the only question, which I don't want to talk about, is what are you doing at tight end? As soon as we have a new coach, we can talk about that and talk about what's going on there. So
I'll just jump in here. Last couple of comments. I think we're moving towards the direction of being able to play complementary football. Get back to that. How good we can be. Not necessarily sure. Gotta read tea leaves. Gotta hear it. Gotta see it this spring from a couple of guys besides who was it? Burks that went crazy last year. It was like the only one. Want to see other guys and want to see material.
Well, Jaden Gibson had nearly 500 yards in 23.
Yeah, that's
right?
True. That's true.
If Burks and we have 3 or 4 wide receivers.
13 catches.
Exactly. So, not to interrupt you, but I think you're right. Okay, Chris, go right. Keep preaching.
I'm just saying,
keep preaching the good word. The portal season has not been the disaster.
No,
some of our fans have thought it has been.
But patience. We said that to start the show when I was talking to Jason. Patience. I think that's the biggest thing for this spring and summer cycle is patience. I think it's going to come together. And I'm hopeful that it comes together. It's got to be. They got to show it. Look, I agree, people. Overall, it's got to be better. We were sitting here arguing about Ethan Downs and the defense. Defense was not your issue last year. It was definitely your offense, right? So whole thing is it can't be any worse. It's only up from here. I think you went out there and got quality guys on offense. I think that you could still make a couple of more moves offensively and defensively, whether that's looking at a corner or two or maybe adding to that defensive line, which Chris Mason kind of makes me feel like, hey, we may have an answer tonight. Got to figure out what you're going to do about the tight end room. But I still, and that's something maybe I need to go back and look at the Arbuckle offense. I think they're a part of the offense, but I don't think there's necessarily a feature there. Here's an idea, and we'll talk about this next pod, but carry on, not necessarily moving to tight end, like being a legit tight end, but kind of being that.
I think that could happen. He was blocking pretty well.
I mean, he's already as big as Trent Smith was in our initial air raid offense, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. He's a guy I think that could be expendable at that. But no, I really like the moves. I think Kendall Daniels, obviously the guy's returning. That's huge. You got to do that. Self-maintenance. You got to take care of yourself sometimes. But when you go out there and you add kind of those high risk, high reward guys that we've been asking you to go and get, right? This kind of shuts up some people right now. Marvin Jones Jr., that's a premium get-up. That's a premium pickup.
5-star, Mr. 5-star.
That's a premium pickup. Kendall Daniels, that's a premium pickup. These are guys, granted, whatever their team situation was or whatever you've heard the knock on them is, these are guys that were not only highly talented out of high school, highly recruited, but these are guys that still were highly sought after in the portal by schools that are playing in the playoffs now. Not to come and set the bench, ride the bench or just be competitive depth. No, to come out there and actually compete for a spot and win that spot and start, right? So the thing is that you went and got some guys, high risk, high reward. It's all about the development. And it starts now. January 13th is a crucial date for everybody just to make sure everybody gets on campus. They've already signed whatever they need to sign to be there. So that's going to be the biggest thing. But I'm slowly but surely becoming more excited about this season, but this is going to be a long off season for a lot of us, and just hopeful that things can get back, they can right the ship, which I believe that you can do, and I think you set the building blocks. I think that you definitely have to go get a corner to make everybody to really set people at ease, but I think you go get a wide receiver and a corner. And I think that once you get JJF, those three things, if those three things happen, whether that be now or in the spring cycle, I think people will stop breathing so anxiously, stop being so anxious about this season, right? I think people will be a little bit happy. But to me, one thing that I'll say, and this will be the last thing, it kind of feels different with the staff going out there into the portal and bringing in guys that are younger, right? Meaning that they have a year or two of eligibility. These guys are still – it makes you feel like, okay, I think BV and company, they're not just doing this and making this a facade. I think that they're calm. They're calm in the storm. And I think they know this is a contract year for all of us. But at the same time, we're still going to recruit. We're still going to keep our culture. We're still going to do the things that we know can make us successful. So I think that gives me some confidence in what's going on there at OU. So that being said, people, let's these gentlemen have anything else to say. Like, subscribe, do all those different things. Hit that like,
guys.
Channels.
In a nice way. Fuck y'all. We don't give a shit.
Coach had to say hello.
Shout out to Coach, man. Shout out to Coach, his Notre Dame guys. But with that being said, people, we